Welcome back. Matt Gilmore sitting in for Aaron Rand today on this Labor Day Monday, and it is 5:08, and that means David Heurtel, former Quebec Liberal cabinet minister and political analyst, is here. Hi, David. Just before we get started, I want to say that this segment is brought to you by Guaranteed Industries and Can Air, a brand worth promoting with high-efficiency furnaces and heat pumps. Call Guaranteed at 514-342-3400, serving Montrealers since 1957. The first place to start, obviously, David, is tomorrow with Legault. He's going to be testifying in front of the Gallant Commission that's looking into cost overruns at SAAQclic. What are you looking for in that testimony, and how big a moment is this for the Premier?
Well, obviously, Legault testifying is a big moment, but I think what's going to be also as important, if not more, are going to be the testimonies of his chief of staff, Martin Koskinen, and the man who was then the general secretary of the executive council, which is the top bureaucrat in Quebec, Yves Ouellette. Because after the Premier of Quebec, those two people are the most powerful people in the Quebec government. And so with their testimonies, we are going to get a sense of who is going to try to either defend what the Premier knew or did not know, and to the extent to which this cover-up, because now it's obvious that there is some form of major cover-up that is in place with regards to SAAQclic, goes. And so the Premier's testimony will be, of course, interesting, important, but at the same time, Matt, you have to think that the Quebecers have already made their conclusions. Regardless of how this ends up, it could get even worse, in the sense that maybe the extent and the absurdity of the defense that will be presented tomorrow could make things even worse. But at this point, with what we know and what we have in terms of information, it's going to be very difficult for François Legault to go anywhere but making a major mea culpa and trying to tell Quebecers, look, we screwed up and we're going to make things better moving forward.
Regardless of whether he does that or not, there's already a lot of discontent around this government. The
Absolutely.
Polling numbers are not good at all, to say the least. And there are currently a group of protesters outside the National Assembly calling for him to call a snap election, early election. Do you think that that's something that he might do, or can he weather this thing?
Well, I mean, he regardless of the polling, he is legitimately elected. I mean, he has a majority of seats in the National Assembly. The scandal is going to get worse. This has become his sponsorship scandal, which you'll remember just basically paralyzed the Paul Martin government and led to the ultimate defeat of the Martin Liberals to Stephen Harper. And I think that's going to be the same type of situation. It's forcing the postponement of the cabinet shuffle. It was supposed to be this Wednesday. That's off the table. He's going to prorogue the session and to who knows when, trying to let the dust settle, trying to restart this government. And on top of that, today I'm seeing reports. I don't know if you saw this, Matt, but the SAAQ announced that these documents that they were holding back because of legal privilege. It's going to take 30 days, apparently, to get those documents through the investigation. Both La Presse and the Journal de Montréal are reporting this afternoon. Think about this. First of all, it's cynical to bring that news out on a holiday. And two, as you well know, as a reporter, and two, this shows yet again the total lack of respect and total incompetence of this organization. So nothing to help. So to answer your question, I do not think that there's anything coming out of this, unless there's some sort of direct breaking of the law from the premier, and nobody's suggesting this. Say that. he's going to stay, and his government is going to stay until the October elections in 26. What could happen, though, it could get to a point where someone of stature may go into an open revolt and call for his resignation, a Chrysler Freeland. Because remember, it was the same situation for Justin Trudeau and he was hanging on. He was going up against Pierre Poilievre until Chrysler Freeland did what she did in December of 2024. So unless and I'm not suggesting this will be the case, but just to illustrate the point, imagine if a Christian Dubé, a very well-respected, the most popular minister, senior minister in this government, were to come out and say, François Legault needs to go, then maybe that could be enough. But save that, he's going to stay premier until the next election.
Can you explain very quickly sort of what the impact of a prorogued session would be? Like, I can understand why a leader may be tempted to do that when they're in a minority government situation and they risk losing their government, a non-confidence vote.
Right,
but when you have a majority, what is to be gained from... Is it just cynically not stand in front of Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon and receive battering from across the aisle? Is that all it is?
Well, it's trying. Remember, he did not expect that the fallout of the Guilbeault and Bardel testimonies would be this bad. He did not even expect to testify. Remember this. I mean, it's because of the Geneviève Guilbeault testimony and that email that she sent to both him and Koskinen that we now have his testimony. It was not planned. And so his thought was, let's get it out of the way in August. Let's pull the Band-Aid quickly. Let's take some time to let the dust settle. Take 2-3 weeks for a new renewed cabinet to learn their files, and then attack with a new inaugural speech, which prorogation gives you the opportunity to do, and start fresh and map out an agenda. Remember, this is all part of the strategy. The whole report on secularism, the fact that, his government is working on a new Quebec constitution. He was going to play identity nationalist politics very hard to try to revive his government. So that was what the prorogation strategy was all about. And now it's actually to try to just help him weather the worst of this massive political storm that is getting even worse as we speak, and try to be able to even attempt a change at the conversation.
So that's where the SAAQ is at. The PQ seem to be in a pretty good position going into the fall session whenever it does start. What about the Liberal Party? What does the Liberal Party need to do to sort of break into the mainstream conversation here? Because right now it seems dominated by, it's going to be Plamondon next and Legault's on his way out. But there's no talk really about the Liberals and what they could be doing with the next year.
Correct. And there is, however, and I agree with you, obviously when you look at the polling, the PQ is in control and they seem strong. But there is one weakness when you look at the PQ, and it's the fact that when you look at their support, 27%, all the polling in the last year said this, 27 to 30% of the PQ's support is Federalist. That's very important to note, especially with Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon after the Lucien Bouchard comments about postponing referendums and et cetera, said very clearly, no, we're going to do a referendum first mandate. And so that's an opening for the Liberals. But for Pablo Rodriguez, the most important thing, right now he's trying to rebuild. He's basically where Gorton and Hughes were 3 years ago when they took over the Canadians. I mean, it's a massive rebuild.
So there's an Amazon Prime series coming?
There should be. There really should be about how do you rebuild a political party, because I mean the Liberals are everything needs to be rebuilt in terms of organization, staffing, et cetera, et cetera. But the key here, and I think the real opening, is that while Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon and François Legault are be duking it out on nationalist issues, identity politics, immigration, et cetera, language, et cetera. The top five, when you look at the top five issues for Quebecers, and by far, are tied to cost of living issues. And so there's an opening there for Pablo Rodriguez to claim the economic issue, something that the Liberals have lost since basically 2018. And so for Pablo Rodriguez, he needs to be able to redefine himself and his team as the party that talk directly to the kitchen table issues of ordinary Quebecers, and that's everything having to do with the cost of living.
All right. David Heurtel, thanks very much for this. Really appreciate it.
Great to be with you.